Hello, everybody, and welcome to Genocide Watch. That's what this has become. It's not what I wanted to make this show as the most censored comedian in America. I'd prefer to be a comedian, but instead, here we are with day after day, Genocide Watch. Thank you for joining me. This is incredibly important information, important material, important events, gut wrenching, but important. And thank you for looking outside of your corporate garbage dumpster fires in order to find out what's really going on. The video over my shoulder here is of just standard walking down the street video in Gaza right now. Sheer mass destruction, killing thousands of innocent civilians. I will continue to let this video play. It was posted by Alan McLeod, but I'm not sure it was filmed by. But I'll continue to let it play as I go through some of the details of what's happened in the past few days, and then I'll be getting to the 9 questions that upend Israel's entire narrative, destroy Israel's entire narrative. Those are by Ralph Nader. I'll be bringing those to you in a few minutes, but. So this is 2 days ago. The AP reported that the Gaza Health Ministry has said the death toll is above 8,000 innocent people already. 8,000. That was 2 days ago. So I wouldn't at all be surprised if it's nearing 9,000 by now. And for those of you who are like, Gaza Health Ministry, well, that can't be real. Well, actually, Human Rights Watch and others have done extensive reporting on the fact that the Gaza Health Ministry generally is very accurate, sometimes even undercounting the number of dead, because Gaza, the Hamas in Gaza wants people to think not as many people have died. So sometimes they even undercounted, but it's very close to reality. Every time they go in afterwards, after these conflicts, and do research, many people have been posting the names of all the children who have died already. More children have died in Gaza since October 7th than from conflicts around the world each of the past 4 years, meaning the entire world has not killed in a whole year, has not murdered as many children as Israel has in the span of 3 weeks. Each year for the past 4 years. The entire world has not murdered as many children. That's what Israel is doing right now. That's what they're responsible for. And if you look at their rhetoric, if you look at what's being said on the television airwaves in Israel, some of these people are straight up admitting it. They're saying everyone in Gaza is a terrorist and should be murdered. So many of them are not hiding the fact that they're trying to ethnic cleanse, that they're trying to create Israel's version of the final solution, that they're trying to kill as many people, innocent and otherwise, as possible. It's just beyond horrific. And, I don't bring you the videos of the murdered and blown apart children. I can't handle them. I know that in some ways, many people do bring them to you because they feel we should all be seeing this. We should all be sickened by it. I find it so painful that I can't even continue to function. So I feel like in order to bring you this coverage, I can't be showing you a lot of the horror show that is, in terms of an actual personal basis, an actual human being sitting there facing the fact that their child has just been murdered. You're welcome to look up those videos, but I can't. I feel functioning is more important at this point in order to bring you this information. Gaza's Interior Ministry says an Israeli air attack has hit apartment blocks. This is just in the past few hours, or last night maybe. Israeli air attack has hit apartment blocks in a residential area of the densely populated Jabalia refugee camp, killing and wounding hundreds. Director of nearby Indonesian hospital says at least 50 people were killed there, but there are fears that the toll could rise a lot. Of course, these are all innocent people. These are not Hamas fighters. These are not hand to hand, but barrel to barrel conflict. This is just blowing up apartment buildings. And as you can see from the video that I'm showing, does this look like tunnels that are destroyed? Does this look like those dastardly Hamas tunnels that are destroyed, or does it look like Israel's just blowing up an entire society? Because that's what they're doing. And that's another thing that's been said blatantly by the IDF on television. They've said, we're not worried about accuracy. We're just worried about sheer devastation, meaning worried as in we want to commit sheer devastation. We are not worried about accurately hitting Hamas fighters. We are just trying to destroy as many people as humanly possible in Gaza. Yesterday, I brought you the fact that they continue to terrorize and steal land from people in the West Bank, completely separate from Gaza. So Israel's continuing that portion of their apartheid terrorism as they murder all these people in Gaza, even though West Bank is not Gaza. This is all against international law. These are all war crimes. It's undeniable. Anybody telling you otherwise has really, I want to smoke what they're smoking, because that is amazing that they could deny that this is going on. And in fact, like I've said, many of them are not trying to deny that this is going on. Instead, they're saying things like, oh, everybody in Gaza is a terrorist, so therefore it's fine. So rather than deny that this is happening, because the whole world is looking at these photos and they know it's happening. They know this is a genocide. They know that's what's going on. So the only way to do it is to redefine who these human beings are, calling them animals, calling them savages, calling them barbarians, saying they're all terrorists, even babies. Oh yeah, those babies are terrorists. You know them. You know how those Hamas babies will get you. It's utter insanity. And the propaganda is not holding up. And there is a massive rift, perhaps the largest on any topic, which is saying a lot considering how much our government doesn't represent us. But there's a massive rift between what Americans are saying they want to see or what they care about and what our government is saying right now. Our government is 140% behind this genocide. Every single senator that voted to continue it, including Rand Paul and Bernie Sanders. All but something like 12 in the House voted to continue this genocide. It is a tiny, tiny number of House representatives that are saying anything other than, yes, continue this genocide. Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar are very much the exception, and they have essentially no power. And so the rift between what the American people want, something like 65% of Americans say they want a ceasefire now. They compare 65% with zero of our Congress and our White House and our powerful politicians. Same with Britain, same with many European countries. This is the largest rift, largest difference between what Americans, what British people want, and what their government is doing of just about anything, just about any topic does not have this kind of difference between what the people want and what is actually being done by our governments. Speaking to CNN, a spokesman for the Israeli army, so this is back to the Jabalia refugee camp. Now, by refugee camp, I mean, all of Gaza started as a refugee camp. People were sent there fleeing from the Israeli military. And now there are refugee camps within Gaza where people are again told to flee to if they don't want to be bombed, which this is a tiny little area, Gaza, 25 miles. It'd be a smallish American city if it were an American city. And there's really nowhere to flee. They can't get out. They're in a prison. But they're told to go to these refugee camps, and yet the refugee camps are bombed. So really nowhere is safe. But anyway, sorry, going back to Gaza's interior minister says Israeli air attack has hit apartment blocks in the Jabalia refugee camp. Speaking on CNN, a spokesperson for the Israeli army said the reason they hit the camp was because a Hamas leader was there, unquote. But the military, quote, cannot confirm if it killed the Hamas leader, unquote. Israel bombarded the block with 6 bombs, each weighing 1 ton. So whether there was a quote unquote Hamas leader there or not, international law, every law we have on the book says you can't just bomb an entire apartment complex because you want to get rid of one guy, even if that's what even if he was there, which of course I doubt there's even this Hamas leader. They just say that whenever they bomb an apartment complex. Oh, the leader must have been there. It's the same crap that the United States pulls when we bomb the living hell out of any group of, well, there was an Al-Qaeda leader there. We thought there was an Al-Qaeda leader at that wedding party. We completely obliterated. These people are absolute sociopaths. They shouldn't be. I wouldn't trust them to like drive a school bus. And these people are pushing buttons on some of the largest bombs this world's ever seen. I wouldn't trust them to babysit a couple of kids. They're complete and utter psychopaths. Israeli troops pushed deeper into Gaza. This is coming from Al Jazeera. Deeper into Gaza, with witnesses reporting heavy clashes after tanks reached a residential area in Gaza City. The United Nations Children's Fund's executive director has said that more than 420 children are being killed or injured in Gaza per day. Per day. Should I say it again? Per day, 420 children. Israeli forces have warned Al Jazeera reporter, and I'll get to more on this fact, warned Al Jazeera reporter Yumna El Said. So this is a reporter. This is a reporter for Al Jazeera. This is a well-known reporter, collects checks from a well-known television outlet that is based in Qatar, but he lives in Gaza. And she was told to evacuate her house, meaning the Israeli military is telling these journalists to evacuate, basically signaling that bombing journalists is not an accident. It's intentional. That's what that means. That's what they just alerted people. When you call up a journalist and say, we're getting ready to bomb your house. Yeah, real nice of you to warn me, but they're saying we're about to commit a war crime. We're about to try and kill a journalist. Now, they have killed many journalists. They have killed dozens. But this warning shows it's intentional. They're killing journalists, and you still can't get coverage of a lot of this on CNN or Fox News or MSNBC or NBC or CBS or ABC or PBS or NPR or BBC or CBC. Have I said enough initials? Like, these are their so-called colleagues. They're in the same profession as you. And you're just ignoring the fact that Israel is committing war crimes, trying to kill journalists, trying to kill children, trying to kill elderly. But here's some more on this journalist, what they're doing to journalists. And this is some of the most amazing, I don't even know what to call it, euphemisms, I guess, but propaganda, whitewashing, I guess would be the best word, covering over the truth of the situation. This is from the Committee to Protect Journalists, all right? This is an international organization. Their only job in the world is to try and protect journalists. And even they can't tell you the truth about what is going on right now. Even they are afraid to go against the Israeli propaganda. This is from the Committee to Protect Journalists. They talk about, it's an article titled Journalist Casualties in the Israeli-Gaza Conflict. Now, for those of you who have not been studying this and you haven't been reading that much on it, I will ask you a question that I bet you can still answer. How many? So we have October 7th, right, when Hamas attacked, killed many people. Now, many of those people were killed by the IDF when they decided to just bomb the buildings that Hamas was holding hostages in. But that being said, many people killed October 7th by Hamas. Knowing what little you may know about these stories and things, how many journalists do you think Hamas killed on October 7th? Which is the only time that Hamas has really killed anyone during these conflicts. During this war, whatever you want to call it. I've talked about how each of these terms is really bullshit, but during this massacre, how many journalists? I'm going to say probably zero, because Hamas was not targeting journalists, right? Hamas was going into these kibbutzes, grabbing settlers, grabbing IDF, sometimes killing IDF. But they weren't looking around for journalists. They were grabbing people on these kibbutzes that are nearby to the border with Gaza. So I don't know that we have the final reporting on how many journalists might have been killed on October 7th, but I bet you it's either like 0 or 1. It's probably something like that because that was not Hamas's goal. So of the journalists killed during this conflict, it's been 100% or almost 100% done by Israel because Israel is targeting journalists. They're calling journalists' houses and saying, get out now, and then bombing the houses and often killing the journalists, sometimes killing their families. A well-known Al Jazeera reporter had his family killed and then continued to do his reporting because he didn't know what else to do. Okay, so knowing what we know, that this is essentially 100% Israel killing journalists, think about this title, Journalist Casualties in the Israel-Gaza Conflict. And then think about these first 2 paragraphs. The Israeli-Gaza conflict has taken a severe toll on journalists since Hamas launched its unprecedented attack against Israel on October 7th, and Israel declared war on the militant Palestinian group. No, Israel has declared war on all Palestinians, not just the group, launching strikes on the blockaded Gaza Strip, which is really a prison, not just blockaded, it's a prison. Okay, first paragraph. Who do you think's doing the killing of journalists? Who do you think's harming journalists? Because by that first paragraph, you have no idea, right? Sounds pretty even-handed. I guess journalists are dying on both sides. I guess that's what's going down. No, it's not. No, it's not. What's happening is, yes, Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th, and now Israel is killing all the journalists they can. That's what's happening. That's what's going on right now. And yet the Committee to Protect Journalists won't tell you who's actually doing the killing and murdering of journalists. To continue, CPJ is investigating all the reports of journalists killed, injured, detained, or missing in the war, including those hurt as hostilities spread to neighboring Lebanon. As of October 31st, CPJ's preliminary investigation showed at least 31 journalists and media workers were among. Now, do you think they're going to say those murdered by Israel, which is the truth? No, they're going to say we're among more than 9,000 killed on both sides. They're basically putting all of the murders into one big bucket called those murdered during conflict. And they're saying 31 journalists have been killed or injured in the conflict. It's all by Israel. It's all by Israel. All the journalists murdered and killed and harmed have been by Israel. But they're not saying that. They just put it into a big bucket. So you don't know who's doing the attacking of journalists. It's really unbelievable to see the Committee to Protect Journalists can't say the truth on who the journalists need to be protected from. I mean, amazing. Okay, so I also want to bring you this before I get to the 9 questions that destroy Israel's narrative. Well, let's see. So Israel has now dropped, this is actually from a couple days ago, so it's actually more than this now. Israel has dropped a Hiroshima's worth, I guess Hiroshima is how it's pronounced, a Hiroshima's worth of bombs on the Gaza Strip. They have dropped an atomic bomb's worth of explosives on a tiny 25-mile strip, and most of that has been in the northern part, so really most of that has been in a 5-mile area. Israel has fired over 12,000 tons of explosives into Gaza since October 7th, 2023. The explosive force is estimated to be the equivalent to the nuclear bomb dropped on Hiroshima in Japan in 1945. At least 5,000, this is again 2 days old, so it's actually 8,000 Palestinians have been killed in Israel's latest relentless bombing campaign. Israel's dropped an atomic bomb on a tiny prison in which they held people, men, women, and children. And the governments, many governments around this world, continue to support this disgusting bloodshed, this disgusting massacre. The amount of blood on Israel's hands is just unbelievable right now. And I have also brought to you that Israel does not care. I brought it to you a couple days ago in a live stream. Israel does not care about the hostages. They have very little intent to save many of the hostages. They have something called the Hannibal Directive, in which when someone's taken hostage, they basically drop bombs on the hostage and everyone around them. So there's an example from 2014 when an IDF soldier was taken hostage. Israel bombed so heavily that they killed the hostage and 200 innocent civilians around the hostage. And that's what Israel is doing right now. They don't care about any of the hostages at all. Their goal is to just kill as many people as they can. And actually, I've also brought you leaked documents showing that their plan is also to try and move all Gazans out of Gaza into Egypt, into tent cities, and make them refugees from the place where they were already refugees, which is ethnic cleansing. There's no way around it. There's no way of avoiding that as the term of what's happening here. Israel has also, among their war crimes, please share this, by the way, folks. Please get the word out there about my live streams, about other important coverage like this. I'm going to bring to you massive marches and protests taking place this weekend. I'm going to bring you the details of that in a second, but please share this. If you want certain clips to share to people, you can get them at rumble.com/Lee Camp. All my clips are there, where you can more easily share videos with people. It's all free to watch. And I hope you will do that because I am one of the most censored comedians in America. Now, of course, since this massacre has started, there's very little comedy in these live streams, and I apologize for that, but it just seems too important to worry about that right now. This is amongst Israel's war crimes. We can add white phosphorus. I brought to you, it was more of a, there was less evidence. Sorry. There was already some evidence of it, but now we have even more proof that Israel has dropped white phosphorus, which is a war crime. White phosphorus burns the flesh. It causes the most horrific kind of pain and suffering you can imagine. This is from Amnesty International. This is their official Twitter account. A new Amnesty investigation has found that the Israeli army indiscriminately and therefore unlawfully used white phosphorus in an attack on Deira in South Lebanon on October 16th. The attack must be investigated as a war crime. Evidence confirms, this is from the picture, evidence confirms that they used white phosphorus. So Amnesty International has confirmed that. Just add that to the long list of Israel's war crimes. Indiscriminate bombing, collective punishment. These are all war crimes under Geneva Convention and other international law. Not giving humanitarian corridors, cutting off water, cutting off electricity, cutting off gas, bombing hospitals, cutting off medical supplies. These are all war crimes. And Israel and the United States don't care. Don't care. They don't care about what the international community says. They don't care that they're being viewed as war criminals right now. I actually think, though, that it is having a massive impact on the ability of them to continue to put out this propaganda. It is completely blowing up whatever propaganda the United States, the people in the United States, your average American was believing about this, about Israel, but about the U.S. war crimes, which Israel's in many ways a vassal state to the United States. So these war crimes are also the United States. Many of these bombs being dropped are made in the United States. Some of them still have the brand name on them, which, come on, make an effort. Cover up the brand name. Seriously? But I want to show you some of the massive marches and protests that have happened around the world. Maybe some of you have been to them. Thank you, those of you in the chat telling me to hang in there. I'm hanging in there. I'm doing it. Maybe some of you have been at these. I'm going to be at one this weekend, Saturday. I'll tell you more about that in a second. But this is in massive marches. For those of you listening to the podcast, which is called The Lee Camp Show, This is hundreds of thousands of people marched in London this past weekend. So that's London. Here is Istanbul. Hundreds of thousands there. Just unbelievable amounts of people standing up and fighting back against this genocide. I mean, I grew up with a motto that so this one is, hold on, I missed where it is. This is in France, even though the French have been told that it's illegal to protest to support Palestine. Despite that, tens of thousands have shown up in Paris and other French cities. What I was saying is I grew up with a motto as a Jew in America and in many other places. You grow up with a motto that you hear over and over again, which is never again. And despite the fact that it's Israel doing it, that applies to right now. We should not sit here, sit anywhere and allow a goddamn genocide, allow mass atrocities, allow war crimes. Like, it's funny because what I'm applying right now as a Jew is what we were taught. It was taught by Israel. It was taught by Israeli Jews. It was taught by rabbis. It's taught by, and many Jews and rabbis are standing up for Palestine right now. But I'm applying the edict, the idea, the moral core that we were taught as Jews growing up. I'm atheist by choice, but Jewish by birth, grew up Jewish. And we were taught never again. Don't allow groups of innocent people to be murdered and persecuted. And I'm applying that now. And Israelis are not. Israelis are perpetrating massacres, and many of them are very racist, incredibly racist. This one is coming from Glasgow. You can go watch video after video after video of Israelis talking about Palestinians as if they're rodents or animals or all terrorists and they should all be killed. And it's really the only way that you can justify the horrors that are going on right now is to be ridiculously racist, like unbelievably racist. Munich, Germany, massive protests there. This is in Rome. This one's in Switzerland. This one's in Stockholm. Just huge protests around the world against this. And there is there's a huge ones coming up this weekend. If you're in the United States, the one in DC sounds like it will be extremely large. They're advertising it as let's see, where are we? They're advertising it as perhaps the largest free Palestine, pro-Palestine march that has ever happened in the United States. This is from Mondo Vice. But this is the poster from Answer Coalition and others. Saturday, November 4th. That's a Saturday. Starts at 2 p.m. at Freedom Plaza, which was also where Occupy Wall Street was back during those days. Freedom Plaza in Washington, D.C. Now, Freedom Plaza will not hold the number of people that are going to be there. We're talking, I assume, thousands and thousands. But the center, I guess, will be Freedom Plaza. National March on Washington, Free Palestine. It also says, Biden, no more U.S. aid to Israel. Lift the siege of Gaza now. The people demand a ceasefire. It's co-sponsored by many organizations. Let's see, People's Forum, Answer Coalition, Palestinian Youth Movement, American Muslim Alliance. Anyway, if you have any way to get to Washington, D.C. and be a part of this, you absolutely should. I'm going to be there. I'm going to try and get some video. We'll see how quality the video is that I walk away with. But I'm not speaking or anything. I'm just gonna go be a part of it, and I highly encourage you all to, whatever cities you're in, to join up and fight against this, because every day is hundreds of people murdered. Every day is dozens, if not hundreds, of children murdered. every single day. I'm also bringing you later in this hour. I'm also bringing you just my favorite footage, maybe my favorite footage ever. This is just, it is Code Pink members repeatedly interrupting Antony Blinken during his congressional hearing today. And it is so beautiful. It is everything. It is everything we should be and nothing we shouldn't. But I'm going to bring you a bunch of that footage coming up here. But first, I want to bring you the main topic of this hour, which is the 10 questions. This is by Ralph Nader. Not sure if you've heard of that young whippersnapper. I'm largely a Ralph Nader fan. I think sometimes he puts a little too much faith in electoralism. He thinks we're still going to change the world by pressuring Congress, which I'm done with those clowns, with those sociopathic, incredibly rich, bought off clowns. They got the oil companies' hands so far up their asses they can taste petrol. I don't. So yeah, a little more into electoralism than I am, but still, definitely on the right side of history. Also, there's an easy argument to make, by the way, that possibly no single person in the United States has saved more lives, at least living, but maybe ever, has saved more lives. I suppose you could put, somebody who, ended the Civil War or something on the list, but probably no living American has saved more lives than Ralph Nader, because it was Ralph Nader, in many ways, single-handedly. He had support, but it was his push that got seatbelts in cars. There would not have been seatbelts in cars for decades after he actually achieved it. And it just wouldn't have happened except for the fact that he was pushing and he was guilting them, and he was making Congress look stupid. He was making the car companies look stupid. And so, think about how many lives he's saved over decades with seatbelts. Anyway, here's an article by him, the 10 questions, although I'm only going to bring you 9 because, I like odd numbers like that. I just thought 10 questions didn't really sell it. I'm going to bring you 9 of them. 9 questions for the U.S. media covering the war, the Gaza war. Really, it's a war on Gaza. Really, it's a massacre on Gaza. But all right, number 1. Hilariously, I just X'd out of the page I was reading, but that's called a well-produced show right there. Anyway, number 1. How did Hamas with tiny Gaza, I thought I was going to say tiny Gaza force. How did Hamas with tiny Gaza surrounded by a 17-year Israeli blockade, walls, checkpoints, subjected to unparalleled electronic surveillance with spies and informants throughout Hamas, throughout Gaza, and augmented by an overwhelming air, sea, and land military presence, managed to get these weapons and associated technology for their October 7th surprise raid? Wait for some of our media to ask the president that, or ask some of these Congress members that. Now, the answer is, which I brought you on previous live stream, is that Israel, to some degree, allowed at least some of this to happen. Now, I'm not saying they knew the extent of it. I'm not saying they knew everything that was going to happen, but they allowed weapons to go into Gaza. Many of these weapons were stolen from IDF bases. But there's no way all of that went on without some sort of knowledge of Israel. On top of that, you have leaks from WikiLeaks. You have others that are not even leaks. They're just public statements about how Israel should support Hamas because it will create a rift in Gaza and therefore allow for the crushing of Gaza, divide them politically. And Israel wanted this. They wanted this so that they could massacre Gaza. Now, again, maybe they didn't know much at all would happen. And maybe they thought something tiny, Hamas would kill 5 people and then they'd be able to attack. I don't know. But clearly Israel knew a lot more than they're letting on. Number 2, what is the connection between the stunning failure of the Israeli government, not really failure, as I just said, to protect its people on the border and the policy of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu? By the way, apparently Netanyahu's days are numbered. He's hated within the government. He's hated by the Israeli people. They view him at minimum as failing them. Anyway, recall the New York Times 2023 article by prominent journalist Roger Cohen saying, all means were good to undo the notion of Palestinian statehood. In 2019, Mr. Netanyahu told a meeting of his center-right, what you and I would consider far-right, Likud party, those who want to thwart the possibility of a Palestinian state should support the strengthening of Hamas and the transfer of money to Hamas. This is part of our strategy, unquote. That's a public statement by Netanyahu. Nader continues, note, Israel and the U.S. fostered the rise of Islamic Hamas in 1987 to counter the secular PLO. Number 3, why is Congress preparing to appropriate over $14 billion to Israel in military and other aid without any public hearings and without any demonstrated fiscal need by Israel? So, of course, you and I know the answer to that. It's that our government is completely bought off by the weapons industry. We live in an inverted totalitarian system. Our government is owned by the largest corporations in the world, the weapons industry, the big oil companies, and those are owned by BlackRock and Vanguard and Goldman Sachs and some of the largest the largest banks and shadow banks in the world. BlackRock's called a shadow bank because it's an investment firm that acts as a bank and controls these other entities. And BlackRock and Vanguard are the top shareholder or one of the top shareholders in all of these companies. I see someone in the chat saying I should reach out to them. Anyone can reach out to me. I'm not gonna interact in the comments right now, but anyone can reach out to me by emailing Lee at, is it leecamp.com? Yeah, Lee at leecamp.com is the best place, but you can also do leecampmail@gmail.com. All of those will get to me. And if you want any other contacts or links for me, it's all at linktree.com/leecamp. So obviously I have my sites, but I realize some people go, how do I find his podcast? How do I find his book? How do I find it? It's all at linktree.com/leecamp. If you haven't heard of Linktree, it's just a very simple page that has all your links on it. So linktree.com/leecamp. If you want to go over there. Also, of course, has a link to my Rumble page, to the community, which actually I'll pause here for 1 second and just promote this because I don't want to do it again later. I have a community on Locals. Those of you watching right now on Locals, you're the best. You make this show possible. And that community, it keeps the show going, but it's also very cool to be a part of when I get to interact with them, which is regularly. They're all awesome human beings, and it's 38 cents an episode. Now, all these episodes are free at rumble.com/leecamp, but I will do special segments for them sometimes, usually 1 or 2 a week. But you can post your own stuff over there on the Locals page. If you're on Rumble right now, there's a red button underneath the video that says join. That'll take you there. But if anyone else is not at Rumble and you want to do it, you can just go to leecamp.net. That will forward you there. And you should thank all those people, Locals, because they keep this show going. So if you're watching right now, you're basically benefiting off the 38 cents that they paid. So thank you all so much. All right, let's continue with this, though. Why is Congress sending $14 billion when Israel doesn't even have a need? We know the answer to that. They're demonstrating their love of Israel. They're demonstrating their love of genocide. They're demonstrating their love of murdering children. Oh, yeah. And I'm also going to bring you later in this hour Hillary Clinton's comments on this at this lovely moment, because, she's just always there with the humans, isn't she? Isn't Hillary Clinton just always there to endorse humanity and really, really just help people? She's just a people person. Continuing from Ralph Nader, under international law, Biden has made the U.S. an active co-belligerent. Basically, that's when you get, you're like the guy who helps the manslaughter charge. Your friend killed someone, but you aided and abetted him. An active co-belligerent of the Israeli government's vocal demolition of the 2.3 million inhabitants in Gaza, who are mostly descendants of Palestinian refugees driven from their homes in 1948. Number 4, why hasn't the media reported on Joe Biden's statement that the Gaza Health Ministry's body count, now over 7,000, actually now over 8,000 fatalities, is exaggerated. Joe Biden said it was exaggerated. I brought that to you a couple of days ago. He's completely wrong. Human Rights Watch and others have proven he's wrong. All indications, as Nader says, are that it is a large undercount by Hamas to minimize its inability to protect its people. Israel has fired over 8,000 powerful precision munitions the size of a Hiroshima bomb onto that tiny, tiny area of land. Number 5, why can't Biden even persuade Israel to let 600 desperate Americans out of the Gaza firestorm? So there's 600 Americans. I think there's a couple of hostages, but most of them are not hostages. So 598 are not hostages. They're just Americans that live in Gaza, because there are some with dual citizenship. Sometimes people do go visit their family in Gaza. Now, it's very tough to get in. It takes a lot of paperwork, a lot of time, and sometimes even then you can't get in. But apparently 600 Americans are trapped in Gaza during this massacre. And Joe Biden doesn't even have, I don't know, the power, the wherewithal, the concern to even just get them out. Not even a concern to get them, Americans, out, because they don't care. These are sociopaths, indebted, bought off by corporations. They don't care about humans. If you thought Joe Biden cared about humans, just look at what he and Donald Trump and Obama and Bush have done to America. They're not helping humans. The poverty took the greatest increase since the Great Depression this year. I mean, they don't care about Americans. Our infrastructure is collapsing. People are hungry. People are going to food banks. You got people living, 65% don't know how they're going to pay their next bill. We're basically living on credit cards. We're a nation surviving on credit cards. So he doesn't care about Americans. Number 6, why isn't the mass media making a bigger issue out of Israel's longtime practice of blocking journalists from entering Gaza, including European, American, and Israeli journalists? The only television crews left are Gazan residing Al Jazeera reporters. Israeli bombs have already killed 26 journalists, it's actually 31 now, in the Gaza Strip since October 7th. Is Israel targeting journalists? Yeah, they called their houses and tell them, hello, hey, we're targeting you. They tell them they're targeting them. It's not a secret. Gaza bureau chief of Al Jazeera, his family was killed in an Israeli airstrike on Wednesday. That's the one I told you about, who then went back to reporting afterwards, because what do you do after your family's been murdered? You as a reporter, you try and just continue to get the word out. I don't know. I don't know what you do. I don't know how you survive it. I don't know how anyone survives it when your child or your wife or your husband or someone is murdered by this insanity. I have no idea. Number 7, why isn't the mainstream U.S. media giving adequate space and voice to groups advocating a ceasefire and humanitarian aid? The message of Israeli peace groups' peaceful solutions are drowned out by the media's addiction to interviews with military tacticians. Now, this is where me and Ralph Nader part ways, where he believes that the media is just they're just obsessed with military tacticians. And that's why we ended up in this situation where they're not talking to innocent civilians as much. And then and they're not talking to those who are standing up for free Palestine. No, it's not an accident. It's by design, Ralph. Come on, Ralph. It's by design. If you're at CNN and you, throughout your career, because it takes a long time to become one of the regular faces of CNN, right? Usually takes years. If you're some sort of prodigy, it might take you only 5 years, like a Ronan Farrow or whatever. And of course, he had big family connections and stuff. But if you're a prodigy, it takes you 5 years. But generally, a lot of these people will spend 15 years of nonstop work at CNN to get to be a regular face on CNN. Now, how did they get there? They got there by doing the bidding of corporate America and the U.S. State Department. They didn't get there by constantly pushing back, by going, I'm going to go interview the family that just lost their kid in Gaza. No, they got there by saying, many have died in this conflict. We don't know how they died, but many have died on both sides. They got there by saying mushy mouth shit like that. That's how they got to that position. And if they behave otherwise, they are forced out. And I'm not going to list all the examples right now because I've done it a million times, but long list of journalists forced out. Didn't matter how big they were, how famous they were. Phil Donahue, Jesse Ventura, Chris Hedges. It didn't matter how big they were, how famous, how successful, how excellent, how talented. You come out against war, you're out. You're out. Number 8, why is the coverage of the war overlooking the Geneva Conventions, the UN Charter, and the many provisions of international law that all parties, including the U.S., have been violating? Again, I think we know why. Number 9, where is the media attention on the statements from Israeli military commentators who for years have declared high-tech U.S.-backed nuclear-armed Israel to be more secure than at any time in its history? So why are we ignoring the fact that Israel, all these officials said they were so secure, and clearly they're not secure at all? The reason, again, is because they're doing Israeli propaganda. Israeli propaganda is to tell Israelis, oh, we're secure, don't worry. But it's also, I think, very evident now that Israel knew this thing was happening or something similar to it and allowed it to happen because it's now useful to commit a genocide. And I've brought you also in past live streams. By the way, anyone, those live streams are still up. You can go watch them. I've brought you live streams about all the evidence showing that most of the death, I'm not saying there aren't videos of Hamas killing people, but much of the 1,400 dead, some were IDF, so actively engaged in fighting Hamas. But outside of the IDF and Hamas fighters, many of those dead were done by the IDF because the IDF's response, which took 2 days, over the course of 2 days, I don't mean they didn't respond for 2 days. I mean, over the course of 2 days, they went and just bombed the facilities where Hamas was holding hostages. They just killed everyone in the whole area. And many eyewitness testimony has said the same thing. Don't take my word for it. Go look at it. You can see it for yourself. Okay, I've got more footage for you, including Anthony Blinken being endlessly interrupted. Oh, it's the best. It's the best. I also have Hillary Clinton's insane commentary. All of that's coming up at rumble.com/Lee Camp. It is free to watch there. Did I mention it's free to watch? Rumble.com/Lee Camp. Join me over there. Rumble.com/Lee Camp. And also, if you want to support this show, if you want to see this keep going, become a member at leecamp.net, my locals page as well. But all right. Thank you for those of you joining me, and I will see you at rumble.com/Lee Camp and locals. But let's continue. Just give me 1 second.